Hey, I'm Lee Domingue, serial entrepreneur, pastor, husband, proud father of 5 amazing kids, and boss, as they call me, to my 8 grandchildren and counting. Welcome to the Kingdom Builders podcast. I meet with some incredible leaders, business people, and pastors to learn from their life lessons and wisdom as we seek to live a life of true fulfillment and eternal impact. So glad you're here. Well, I'm so excited about this episode. Maybe one of the most important episodes, at least from my own personal journey, about having an investment mindset versus an expense mindset. And there's a lot of meat on that bone when you really think about it. And I think about, as I was preparing for this, and we were just talking earlier, Harrison, about just some life experiences where this really played out, really in my own life, and therefore affecting the family and so forth. But an investment mindset really is one that sees growth potential. An expense mindset always looks to, wow, this is what it's going to cost me. And I think it creates even a scarcity mindset. Yeah. And scarcity really, I think fear's failure is because it's really from a mindset of like, I'm not going to be able to have enough, or it's going to cost me too much, rather than seeing the upside of the potential of the impact that can be made. And I know in my own journey, and you weren't born yet, but even I think mom was pregnant with you when this kind of even went down, but of hitting rock bottom and in business, and had achieved tremendous success at a young age. But I think about rock bottom experiences, and I wrote this down. Rock bottom has built more winners than privileged ever did. I think that's a powerful statement. I think about Abraham Lincoln. I think of these great examples. Abraham Lincoln, who failed at both 21 and 22 years old. His wife died, who was his sweetheart, at 26. He lost an incredible amount of congressional races several times before ever being elected the 16th U.S. president. Then you take Henry Ford. Henry Ford's first 2 businesses both failed. Yeah. But his 3rd business is doing still pretty good today. Thomas Edison, he was told, you know what? He was told that he couldn't learn really anything. He was basically, everybody thought he was kind of dumb because he was always daydreaming and his mind would wander in class. I guess he had the original, ADHD. Yeah. But he tried the light bulb. Mm-hmm. He tried developing the light bulb over 10,000 times before actually inventing it. Yeah. And something that you may not even know, your grandfather, my dad, had a chance to be the second employee at a company that is very well known today, but most people don't know its name acronym. Actually was because they had tremendous grit and they never quit, and that was WD-40. And WD-40 means water displacement the 40th time. Yeah. So that means 1 through 39, they never, ever, ever got it right, but on that 40th. And I remember Dad telling me, yeah. So Papa said he had a chance to get in the ground floor, but he's like, I'm not going to pass on that.
It won't work. It won't work.
Because it didn't 39 times. Yeah. But that 40th, it did, and the rest is history. Then I think of Walt Disney, probably one of the most creative geniuses in the world, was fired by a newspaper editor for lacking imagination. Walt Disney. And he had no good ideas. Several business failures before he made it all the way into our homes. And we're seeing the impact, Disney still today. And so there's many, many, many stories.
Yeah. I'm even thinking too, just even hearing you say this, gosh, how many times I've heard this as a kid all growing up. If you don't quit, you win. Yeah. If you don't quit, you win. Just hearing that in the back of my mind. But even, seeing, you talked about your business failures early on, of what that looked like. But honestly, I've heard you say, you got a return on failure. You can allow it to define you or refine you. You allow it to refine you to where you could pour blood, sweat, and tears into the next organization. And so what I have seen even from you in your life, you are the epitome of someone that lives with an investment mindset. You never think, what is it going to cost me? It's, hey, what can I sow into here in my time? Even how you look at business, but how you look at kingdom work, how you look at the family. It's, hey, how can I best use this time? Honestly, I remember a year and a half ago when we even started talking about this topic, we were on a plane ride. I can't remember where we were heading, but we were on a plane ride somewhere. And I was telling you how it's so frustrating with a lot of these Christians in the body of Christ. It's like they act like God has a supply problem. Yeah. And so many people are afraid to make the wrong decisions, or they want to, they disguise maybe frugality or stewardship. They use that as a crutch sometimes, rather than they look at everything as, what's it going to cost me? As you just said, rather than, all right, what is it going to really do the exponential and allow God to accelerate it? So just even as I'm thinking through this topic, just hearing from you, what would, in your life, you had those defining moments, but what would you say? You have a story. Do you have a story of a time where you could have looked through the lens of scarcity, but you chose the lens of investment and what God did?
Well, had horrible, if a lot of people don't know this, they see where you're at later on in life and the accolades or the financial wins or whatever, but horrible grades in school. If Thomas Edison was daydreaming in class, I was skipping class. I did not want to be in there. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I just, I was dropped out of college after a couple years. It was mutual. Between LSU and I.
They wanted you to go and you were willing to leave?
I was ready to go. Yeah, I was ready to go to Destin. I was ready to go to 38 to go to the beach. But had that failed first business, was always told, you're never going to amount to anything. And then created this multi-million-dollar business, this fintech company, Apple One, from the basement of a rent house, eating a lot of peanut butter and jelly. But expanded those investments, even after selling it and having a liquidity moment, expanding those investments into healthcare, real estate, oil and gas, and been able to give millions of dollars to fund the kingdom.
But I will say, before that, though, there is a story I remember you sharing. I've heard it. There's a story whenever you were at Emeralds.
Yeah.
And you had a chance to have an investment. Yeah. Or an expense mindset, because y'all were on the trajectory where y'all were just starting to take off.
Right. And things were really booming. And there were two different times. One was there was a spiritual moment where we were at a church in California, and it was Chris Herndon, our CFO and business partner and a longtime friend. And Chris was always about, what's it going to cost? What's it going to cost? And I remember I felt God really, really say, you need to be super generous. Now, this was in the beginning years of the company. And as CEO, I was like, man, I just feel like we're supposed to make this generous gift to help Jewish evangelism. And so let's make this generous gift. And it was a number at the time. It could have been $1 billion because we didn't have it, but I felt we were supposed to make it. And so we're debating this in the church service. It's a conference, basically.
I have a question for you on that. How did you said you knew you were supposed to do that? I've had questions from other people before. When God's, just a little side nugget. How do you know when God's speaking to you? Like, what does that look like for you?
A couple different ways. One is usually in agreement with my wife on a topic, or two is I have this thought with peace. I have thought, but also sometimes there's a little fear with it. It's like almost like a little butterflies, to where I'm sensing like, okay, God, is this you in this?
Almost like it requires the faith to pull it off, the faith piece.
Yeah, okay. But that's been my life story though. But so we're in that moment in that church, and I'm like, well, I think we're supposed to give $15,000. And that back then, that was a massive amount of money. And Chris looked at me, he goes, we ain't got it. We can't do that. And I'm looking at him, and we're arguing back and forth. And he's like, I said, but I've heard God on this. He says, we can't do that. I said, that's why you're CFO and I'm CEO. And so it's like, and so we're in this debate. He goes, all right, if you feel like you heard God. And that was the amazing thing. Don't miss this point. Chris was a business partner of mine. Yes, I was CEO, he was CFO, but we were partners. Mm. And in that partnership, there were moments where I stretched him. And it stretched him massively, very uncomfortably. But I felt like I'd heard God. Well, when we made that gift, we're like, it was total in faith. And that gift came back to us thousands of %. in return. But it was just taking that, having that investment mindset and being obedient to what God was wanting to do in that moment. But in the business side, and I think all of it matters, but in the business side, I remember our company, the company that bought our company was at the time the largest compliance company in the world. And they had major market share all over the world in their various products. But I'll never forget, they could never close this one bank. It was a massive U.S. bank. Everybody would know the name of it, but a massive U.S. bank. Stagecoach is their emblem. And is a massive U.S. bank. And so they were trying to close this president on doing business. They could never, ever, ever do it. And I was in there, they bought us. I come in, I say, man, I can close that deal. And they're like, well, we've never been able to do that. I'm like, that's because you guys are transactional and I'm relational.
Wow.
I said, there's a convention in New Orleans. I'm going to invite them to Emeril Lagasse's restaurant. We'll get a private table in Emeril's restaurant in the kitchen, and Emeril's going to cook for us. Now, I don't want you to balk at what it's going to cost. It'll be ethical, above reproach, but I said, we'll get this deal done. And that CFO thought I had lost my mind. He says, we don't spend that kind of money on stuff like that. That's out of policy. I said, how's that policy working for you? You can't close that customer.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we had this 4-hour meal, never talked about business. Wow. We talked about life, relationship. I got Herndon getting nervous, CFO. He's getting nervous because I wasn't bringing up anything about the relationship. True story. And I'm pushing back on him going, we got this. And so we're talking about life. And that CEO said, like, he hadn't had a great time like this in a long time. It was just like, it was a great experience. So as we're getting up, after we paid this massive bill, we get up and he's like, man, I like these guys. We need to do business with them. And the rest was history. And I think in revenue, it brought from, $2 million a month in revenue for that one dinner. So let's say the dinner was an expensive dinner, in which it was a lot. But was it worth it? You think?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so what happens is so many times we look at what it's going to cost us rather than the investment made, the impact and the return we're going to get. You see, it's investment over expense. It's excellence over extravagance. Have an investment mindset is not extravagant.
Yeah.
It's wisdom. It's using your wisdom. It's using work ethic, but it's trusting in leaders to see further. I hear John Maxwell say this all the time. Leaders see further than others see, and they see it sooner.
Yeah.
God's always blessed me with an ability in the things I was involved in to see things a little further down the road and try to figure it out, to come work backwards and re-engineer it or reverse engineer it. But that Emeril's Table story is so powerful. And I can give you again and again over creating relational experiences that were costly, but the return was thousands and thousands of time. So
honestly, that's a great even just business wisdom principle in the sense so many of these guys, they have everyone that wants something from them.
Right.
You created a moment to have a relationship to where you're not taxing them, you're not bringing up all this stuff. There's it made me think of, there's a business guy in the church, very successful, older man, very wise, loves the Lord, great guy, and hope to be like him one day. And I've heard him say many times one of the reasons he likes me and Sam is because we don't ever talk to him about the industry he's in. We don't ever talk to him about work. I'm asking how he's doing, how's his wife, his kids, what's new in his world, and always just trying to befriend him. It just made me think, I'm like, that's a great, it's
a principle. And whether you're in ministry, whether you're a pastor of a church, whether you're on staff at a church, whether you're in business, in any aspect of it, those principles are the same. Yeah. And so we should have an investment mindset in the church, but you have to teach and model what that looks like. You can't just say, I'm going to have that, because you don't want to be reckless either with wasting resources that's when you cross over into extravagance, and you're not going to be successful if you do that. But if you teach and model an investment mindset, see, owners focus on investment. Members, they focus on cost and expense, and what they get out of it. And so your organization, if you want to model that right culture, whether it's your church or your business, and I wrote this down, whether you sell a product or a service, whether you're the product, whether it's your book, whether it's your speaking, whether it's your course, or your expertise, there's a huge difference between expense and investment. And it's amazing how many times businesses can be turned around just with focused investment at the right time. Well, it hadn't worked in this environment, or hadn't worked in this season. Well, when they've made that investment, I mean, Apple's one of those businesses. There's many, many companies, when they've made these different investments, that quickly they've turned around because they improve three things. They improve the process, they improve the product, first, product, process, and then the people. So they improve those three things. And, but there's a huge difference between that investment and that expense strategy. Sure, cutting expenses in order to keep the business lean, I think that's smart. I think there's wisdom in that. I think it's always prudent to do that. But you have to be careful not to mistake smart and needed investments for expenses. You know, because otherwise, what do? We limit growth, we limit productivity, and then the overall impact. And I read something as we were preparing for this episode, and it's I want to give a correlation, because it's a lady. I'd never heard of this lady before, but her name is Maria Keckler, and I think she's from the academia world, both, but entrepreneurial as well. I think she's from California, but she said this. She goes, an expense mindset equals survival business model. An investment mindset equals growth business model. An expense mindset creates survival expenses like rent, administration, office supplies, taxes, luxury items. Growth investments are different. They're training, they're systems, they're tools that improve the product, the process, and the people. Expense mindset says, we can't afford that now. How many times have you heard, we can't afford that now? Whereas an investment mindset is different. Investment mindset says, we can't afford not to grow now.
Yeah.
Timing is so important. Whether you're launching a church, whether you're launching a business, whether you've planted that church and you're trying to grow it, and it's going to take resources in order to grow it. But you're going to have to focus on your product, your people, and your process. Also, expense mindset or a survival business model are always at risk, whereas growth business models lead to innovation, creativity, and impact. In tough times, watch this. In tough times, a expense mindset cuts expenses. In tough times, an investment mindset invests in growth. But you've got to be able to manage your resources to be able to have the ability to invest in your product, in process, and in people, even in a downtime. Most very successful people that are investors will make tremendous amount of money in those downtime is because they have the ability to take advantage of the opportunity that having that investment mindset.
And I'll say, I've even heard you say, even with the investment mindset, with looking through that lens, always start with that end in mind.
Yes.
Always have that piece of, you know, whenever you're going into a location, I mean, even on the church side, we never go into a church launch to launch a campus without an exit strategy of that portable campus to a building. There's a timeline. Same in the business strategy. Same with, you know, in my business, when you've helped me flipping cars, when you've helped me navigate all kinds of stuff, you're like, hey, well, what's your exit strategy? All right, so what's the plan when this happens? What's the plan when I'm just trying to survive, I'm just trying to keep going what I got, juggle all these things. And you're like, hold on, what's going to happen 5 years from now? What are you going to do in a year from now? And I'm like, it's a great question.
But you like the money you're making for the month, but it's like, hey, you were hanging, I was looking at you going, well, you're flipping those Teslas, and that's great. And I have Tesla stock, and I'm loving what it's doing right now. But I'm sitting there going, you may want to get out of that inventory for a bit. Yeah. And you got out of it right before the bottom
before
dropped.
It dipped, and then but even in so many different areas, but always, you know, always starting, you know, with that end in mind has just been something. Even when you're looking for, you know, the investment mindset rather than the expense, just if you start with the end in mind, it'll save you on the expense side.
Yeah.
Because you are planning for growth.
It will. And I think you got to ask yourself this question. What would, as a forward thinking investment mindset, what would your organization look like if you had that kind of mindset? How many people could you actually serve? So you start thinking, and I'm talking about start asking yourselves this question between now and the year end. How much tangible or intangible profit if you're a business, or impact if maybe you're a church, would you like to see? What causes would you be able to help that you can't help now? So even on the generosity side.
Well, I think about with App One, with like the big global map you had.
Yeah.
And the missions organization, people that didn't even know that what they were doing Monday through Friday was supporting orphanages, people that weren't even Christians.
That's right. But what it did for our culture, because we didn't promote it, but what we did is we put a visual out there in the lobby of that world map, and every dot where we were supporting a project through our local church, then that dot represented, and many of them were from those areas. And it impacted them, and what it did to our culture of organization was through the roof, because every time we closed a deal, every time we sold a product, parts of those revenue was going around the world to 145 different projects, making a massive impact. So
amazing.
But another question you could ask is, how much impact would you have had that you don't have now?
Wow.
And that these are questions that we rarely ask, because we're so busy on the treadmill we're on this treadmill of business, and we're so focused and ingrained in it. We've got to back away sometimes, ask ourselves these type questions, and try to make that mind shift. And when you do, and you move from an expense mindset to an investment mindset, what happens is everything starts to change in the organization. You'll grow a more profitable business. You'll grow a more impactful organization, your church, regardless of the economic conditions. When you have that, because if you know what you're doing, even in the downtime, you can experience levels of growth. Because they start with the end in mind. So if always start with the end in mind, as you said, I would say another one is invest in those 3 Ps of your product, your process, and your people. So you can move from a survival mode to a explosive growth mode.
Yeah.
But you got to know where to start.
Yeah.
You got to know where to start.
Even thinking about that, the 3 Ps, there was a gentleman I was with recently, young, very successful, and he's, I wouldn't say hands off. He's just not in the day to day because he's doing all these other things. And one of the things that he took away is because I started really investing in my people. Yeah. He started really sewing into his people, paying them really well, taking care of them outside of just monetarily. Like, hey, how can I create spaces for your family, for your kids? It is so true, because then it created a healthy culture in his workplace. It created people wanting to be there. They started selling more products. Their business revenue went through the roof. They're able to hire more people and just, there is something to that.
And many times it's just a small shift. I would say ask yourself these questions in relation to people. How competent and how confident, competence and confidence, are your key players to execute at the highest level? Number 1. Number 2 is, do you have highly trained people that can support the growth that you're wanting? So you got to invest in that now.
Yep.
And I think so many of us, we forget about that training part. And that's great on-the-job training, but I think you can preempt that and do some focus and training on trying to develop your people earlier on. But do you have a plan to support the success? So not only support the growth, do you have a plan to support the success? Because what it took to get there is going to be different to take it to the next level, to create sustainability. And then what training and development could help them perform at the higher level? You got to ask yourself those questions as it relates to people. In your product, what are you selling? Well, and in the church world, it would be really the gospel. What are you trying to see people come to? A realization they need Jesus, a realization they need salvation, a realization they need spiritual family, they need forgiveness, they need to be set free, and then they need to give that away and disciple others. But a product can be physical. It can be your message. It can be your story. It can even be you as the product. How can you improve it to be more attractive? How can you improve it to engage more people? One of the things that I know at Highlands that we've done is have a membership engagement platform with Studio C that they made that's part of an app that's helped us re-engage families that were on the peripheral just by giving them a better engagement experience.
Because people want to feel known.
Yeah.
People want to feel like my church knows
And
me.
needed.
And known and needed. And honestly, the app was a great way. And it's a step. There's still more steps to take that we are actively taking. But it was a step to make our people feel known.
Yeah.
You know, it was a step to like, hey, we are a big church, but big church can be made small through the app, through small groups, through different discipleship opportunities.
So the be product, who can help you move it faster? How can you fine tune its packaging, delivery, so it stands out from any of the other products that are out there? I have a saying, it's your difference that's your value. And you're rewarded for the problems you solve. Many times you're remembered for the ones you create, but you're rewarded for the problems that you solve. So does your product solve problems? Does your product solve? That's a great question to ask. And then lastly, the other P is process. So what systems are you using? What tools are giving you agility and speed? It's all about speed. The reason we love Amazon so much is because we get it immediately. You order it,
2 days.
and it's dropping same day, next day, or a couple of days. What's your plan to cut through the competitive landscape noise, I call it white noise of the marketplace? What's your plan to boost and automate your member engagement? Like, you have to have a plan. If you're a pastor in a church, your customers, so to speak, and I don't use that word, but it's those members. You've got to have an engagement process, not only to get them, but help them along the journey. Because we want everyone to experience salvation through Jesus, but that's the first step. We gain salvation, forgiveness of sins, but then we're on a journey of development in our own life. I love how Pastor Chris says this. He says, you can be taken out of Egypt, but there's still some Egypt in you. And so it's a process of working out our salvation and then sharing it with others. But what's your plan to accomplish even more in less time? Looking for areas of efficiency.
If you had to rate these, so there's process, there's product, there's people. I know a lot of people that may not have a good product, but yet they got great people that can sell that product. I know a lot of people that may have a great product, but they got bad people. Or they have like a bad salesperson or something. So maybe or if you're missing the process, you got a great product, you got a very passionate, great salesperson.
Well, look at McDonald's. McDonald's has a process of cooking out the fastest hamburgers on the planet in vast volume. And, and their market share is just incredible, even though they're really in the real estate business for a lot of it. Chick-fil-A's got these incredible culture, the people all smiling. I've never seen somebody in a bad mood at Chick-fil-A. I have at Popeyes and KFC, but not at Chick-fil-A. You get a fist fight in the drive-thru at Popeyes.
You're still going to wait 20 minutes.
Yeah, still they're dropping the chicken. It's still waiting. And it tastes really good, but it'll kill you. And unlike, Chick-fil-A, you have this great experience. Well, it's their people. Their product is good, but their people and their process is spectacular. So if I had to rate those, they're all important. I would say.
Yeah. What would you say to a pastor and then to a business person? The thing that they should be focusing on. They're three very important, but what's the first?
Yeah. To me, it would be people. I would say focus on my people. I've got to have a clear vision for my people to be able to, the process is just going to deliver the vision. So have a clear vision for the people
that's good.
And and then model it myself. I have to take ownership of modeling it myself. Otherwise, it's not going to work. It's not going to last. I should say that. It may work for a season, but it's not going to last. Always be about continuous improvement. There's no sacred cows. Just because it worked 5 years ago doesn't mean it's going to work today. And that's evident. And I think the 5-year span now is maybe every few months things change, evolve. Be open to that. And, but I would say people first, and then, the product and the process have to be dialed in, because it's got to be something that people really, it's helping people. It's not a product that is just going to fall short, and after the sizzle is gone, you may have sold them one thing. See, we don't want customer satisfaction. We want customer loyalty.
Yeah. That's great.
We want them to be loyal. Customer satisfaction. I have ebbs and flows. Going to a restaurant, the service may have been bad. Maybe I had a bad day. Food's amazing. I may give it another chance. I may go in a restaurant. Service is amazing. Food's mediocre. Well, I felt good when I left. I may go back again. Maybe they just had a bad menu day that day. but I think your people are definitely paramount, and then product and process.
Yeah. And we hear from a lot of different people, pastors included, pastors and business people, where coming out of COVID, I'm so sick and tired of talking about COVID, but it's a placeholder in society and things that we've walked through as a country and as a state. And so a lot of these people I hear, oh, I'm just trying to get by. They're stuck in this survival mode.
Right.
Versus rather hearing what you're saying, moving to a growth mode, moving to a growth mindset or an investment mindset. How would you say for some of these people that are stuck in that survival mode, they need to ask themselves the question, first I got to see, am I one of those people? But how?
I would say one, stop living in yesterday. I think we have an incredible opportunity, especially, let me speak to churches for a second. Churches and Christian business leaders. We have an incredible opportunity to take ground right now.
Yeah.
And so this is our chance to do a lot of good. There's a lot of people that are hurting. We went through a pretty tough election and all of that. I'm excited at where the candidates that are in control or at least standing on biblical values, because I think we should be vocal in our values, because it's what's going to bring the answers to the needs of people, and eventually, because those other ways don't work. And so what we've got to do, though, is get over this scarcity mindset of living in that yesterday. Well, there was COVID. Stop making excuses. The worst excuse, like the best excuse is the worst excuse.
Yep.
And so stop making excuses, and getting better results doesn't have to be so difficult. It really doesn't. You got to have that mental shift, though, from survival mode to growth mode. Say, no. We're going to grow, and it's going to start with me as the leader, then my people, and then they're going to bring it to the rest of the people. That works in business or in church. It all starts with that leader. Once the investment mindset is in place, everything else starts to be put in place. And because the mindset, if you have this type of mindset, of an expense mindset, it's going to cost you a whole lot more in the long run, because it's limiting all your growth. Yeah. But you've got to identify it, and you've got to deal with it. And you've got to deal with it by having courage and saying, you know what? I've got to stop sounding like Eeyore every time that I'm trying to make a business decision where risk is involved. Being a Christian has got risk. Being a believer has risk. Being a business owner has risk. Being a pastor, running, overseeing a church, a ministry, an organization, it all has risk. Run to the risk. Don't run from it. Yeah. And I heard someone say years ago, I'll never forget, it was some preacher in a service one time in Texas. This is in the 80s. He says, I really spell faith, R-I-S-K. Which is risk. And so we're to take those risks. If I wouldn't have taken risks and taken the easy way, if I wouldn't have leveraged certain things at certain times that I really believed in, or pushing my CFO and business partner to make that investment and saying, man, this is going to be great. This is where we need to go. And listening to God in that, or the peace. And I would say, it was the peace. I didn't have an audible voice. It was the peace of God that led me in that decision. So there was a prompting to have an act of generosity, and that generosity actually opened doors. So I would say it this way. An investment mindset will always be generous. If it's a kingdom investment mindset, it's always going to be generous. It's always going to include others. And there's always going to be this logarithmic increase of impact that's so much further than what we could do just by ourselves, because it's always going to include other people. And I think when we have that, we're going to look back on this and say, wow, I'm so glad I made a decision to grow and have an investment mindset. So in other words, I'm going to have a growth mindset for my church, my business, my life, my family. And this is going to be the greatest impact that I've ever had. But you've got to be willing to step out of your comfort zone. Every place that you've ever grown has been outside. All growth and anything impactful in your life all came out of a discomfort zone. None of it's easy, right? But run to it. So if those of you who are listening, I just want to encourage you to run to it. Don't shy from it. Some of you know you're supposed to take a risk, and you're supposed to, but you're settling for mediocrity only to have the regret of that the rest of your life, rather than saying, no, I'm going to pin my ears back. What's the worst that can happen? You fail? Well, the value of failure is learning. And the value of learning is improvement.
Yep.
So let's stop having the scarcity mindset. Let's stop having, oh, what it's going to cost me, rather than no. This is the impact that we can make as an individual, as an organization, as a church. So let's be open-handed, open-hearted, use wisdom.
Yeah.
But we're going to see not only what happens, but what God can do through our lives, making this significant kingdom impact. And as I always say, when we're operating in our God lane, it's where the greatest fulfillment comes. And I think all of us that are listening right now, our greatest need and our greatest desire, honestly, is fulfillment. And I think it comes from this.
100%. No, I think it's just echoing in my mind is if you don't quit, you win.
Yeah.
The scarcity mindset, one of the biggest lies is, oh, this hasn't happened. I mean, at least for my generation, everyone wants the quick, shiny thing right now.
Yeah.
I'm even guilty of that at times, but versus being able to, if it doesn't work out right away, that's not failure. Yeah. Failure isn't, that's not denial. That's not, oh, this won't ever work. I mean, WD-40 on the 40th time. Right. So many people are throwing in the towel so early, and they tap into that, and then they want to shrink everything together, and that's why they stick with the mediocre job, or they stick with the mediocre, not taking the risk, not taking the step, because they're too afraid of that failure, and and honestly, they just back themselves into that mindset. Well, and so we want to, I think, challenge the listeners into stepping and breaking past that.
Well, and I think too, you have to know, and this will be, and we'll close this episode. I think that you need to look at an investment mindset, not just monetarily.
Yeah, that's good. Wow.
An investment mindset. So I'm looking at more, and you've heard me say this, I'm focused a lot less on a third generation of wealth and more on a third generation of faith. That's an investment mindset, because if you get the faith down first, the wealth becomes a weapon to do amazing impact for the kingdom. So whether in your investment mindset of your own financial portfolio, or it could be some of you need to invest in kingdom work that your church is doing. Some of you need to just be obedient to what you do have and stop being stingy and Scrooge about it, because it's not making you happy. You may have, I know so many people with massive balance sheets and they're miserable.
Yeah.
They're miserable. And so I think that generosity is a key part of having an investment mindset. Now you need guidance. You need to make prayerful decisions when you're investing in kingdom work, or when you're investing in some type of business venture or what have you. But I do believe that there's multiple ways you can invest your time into people, to where you're mentoring them and investing in them and helping them along the journey, hopefully to go further, faster, and a greater impact than I could even make. And so I think it's one that's being selfless versus selfish.
Yep.
But I think when we take that stance, I think the return, it's that eternal return on investment. But I think it's something that brings such joy to me. And as we're ending this in the year, 2025, I believe is going to be the best year we've ever had.
Yeah.
I think there'll be some tense moments, and I'm hoping people will take advantage of opportunity to invest not only resources in business, not only resources in the kingdom, but give their life to it.
Yeah.
And when that happens, I think you're going to see such fulfillment and such kingdom impact, and you're going to see the church advance like never before. And we're really prayerfully, I know your mom and I are planning as we end the year to be super generous, super forgiving, and to do the three things in the Domingue household that's kind of a mantra for us. And that would be, we're going to be thankful, we're going to be grateful, and we're going to extend gratitude each and every day. So
as we close, just want to challenge everybody out there for 2025. Let's finish up this year strong, but for 2025, to choose that investment mindset more than just monetary. I love that you said that, because so many times, even when we talk on generosity, people immediately think money, and it's so much more than that. And so want to challenge the people that 2025, let's step into a investment mindset. Let's leave scarcity in 2024 and press into all that God has.
It's great.
And so to really reach more people, honestly.
That's great.
What more we could do together.
Let's finish strong, because if you don't quit,
you win.
You win. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We'll see you in 2025.
Thanks for tuning in to the Kingdom Builder Podcast with Lee Domingue. We hope today's conversation has inspired you to live out your calling, impact others, and build God's kingdom in powerful ways. Stay connected with us for more stories of generosity and purpose, and visit kingdombuilders.us for more resources to help you grow as a kingdom builder. Until next time, keep living with purpose and advancing the kingdom.